with us here in the studio. The big Euro summit, of course, coming up later today, and the papers are full of it, aren't they?
Yes, hello again, Stuart. Some of them are really playing up the potential for differences between the French and German leaders. Let's have a look at the Independence cartoon today. They've got Sarkozy and Merkel with big black eyes and stars all around their heads with a torn-up Euro treaty between the two of them. You can see they've had a bit of a punch-up there, so they're...
Vicious stuff.
Yeah, they're stressing there in the Independent that there are still some differences between those leaders. There's also an interesting piece in that paper taking a tour around Europe to see how the possibility of greater European integration might go down across the continent. They say it's not a terribly popular idea. In Italy, Mario Monti's government is facing opposition from both the right and the left. Of course, as a technocratic government, there aren't actually any politicians in it, which means they all feel free to attack it from every direction. They all say he's given too much sovereignty over to Brussels. Same's going on in Spain. The socialists who've just lost an election are likely to make a great fuss if Mariano Rajoy, the new Prime Minister, hands over more power to Brussels. And even in Germany, the socialist SDP aren't particularly keen about the idea of consolidating. If we have a look at papers in some of those countries, over at El País, they say in their editorial today that Angela Merkel has put her foot too far on the accelerator and is trying to push everyone over the abyss. They say she's just pushing too hard and too fast, and she's asking for too much. They can't handle it. And in La Repubblica's editorial in Italy, they say Mario Monti's austerity plan announced yesterday is making the poorest people pay for a financial crisis they didn't create. It's not fair and it's not democratic.
So presumably a good moment then for Eurosceptics on the left and on the right just to come out and say, I told you so.
Well, that's what The Guardian says that they're doing all across Europe. But they do say that they shouldn't celebrate too quickly, those Eurosceptics. They say we've got to realise this economic situation is pretty terrible for lots of Europeans. But if the euro collapses, it'll be a lot worse. There'll be soaring unemployment and it won't work out well for anybody. And they say voters know that really. So any politicians who try and sell their voters the idea of pulling out of the euro, that would be a better alternative, will lose those elections.
Now, we've got a big international conference on Afghanistan. It's opening today in Bonn, and I'm sure the papers have a lot to say about that.
We do. Here it is on the front page of The Guardian. No retreat in Afghanistan urges top UK commander. They've interviewed Britain's top man in Afghanistan, the General James Bucknell. He says we should be looking at what NATO has been doing well. He says the Taliban aren't in any position to overthrow the current government. They can't even secure their own strongholds in Kandahar. And we should look at how bad the situation was 18 months ago and see just how much it's improved. The paper's editorial, though, inside The Guardian takes quite a different point of view. They say NATO has made tons of mistakes in Afghanistan. They say that its surge has just strengthened the insurgency by making Pashtuns especially more and more resentful of the foreign presence, and that they've got to have serious peace talks which really bring the Taliban to the table if they're going to get anything out of these negotiations.
Bit of a retreat, though, for Vladimir Putin's party in Russia. What are the Russian papers saying?
Well, look at this cartoon in the English language paper, the Moscow Times. You've got people there blindfolded and tied up, and the one person who isn't blindfolded is gagged. Now, that person is meant to be an electoral observer, and the article there is about how they've cracked down on electoral observing groups. There's one group there called Golos in Russia, whose job it is to try and check that that vote was fair and transparent. But the paper says that they've encountered huge amounts of trouble from the authorities when they're trying to do that, and that shows just how worried the Kremlin is that it's losing control over Russian voters, especially now that opposition groups find it easy to mobilise dissent on the internet.
And you're also looking rather different, slightly more furry kind of diplomacy, should we say?
Yes. Is the world ready for a Scottish panda, is what the Independent's asking. I don't think they've got kilts, sadly. But look, that plane there is the FedEx Panda Express, which touched down in Edinburgh yesterday, with the first two pandas to arrive in Britain in nearly 20 years. This is a big diplomatic coup, of course, for the Scottish First Minister, Alex Salmond, who's in Beijing trying to get Scotland on the diplomatic agenda of big countries, big powers like China. Of course, some controversy about this deal, because China, of course, does have a slightly dodgy human rights record, and some people not quite happy that the Scottish government will be paying nearly €1 million a year to the Chinese government to keep these pandas. But I think Edinburgh Zoo will certainly conclude it's probably worth it. They had crowds of school children waiting for hours just to get a glimpse of those pandas getting off that plane yesterday.
Cute stuff. I was just looking at the pandas. Their eyes are as black as Merkel and Sarkozy's were in the top cartoon, aren't they?
Yeah.
Very beautiful. All right, Elena, thanks very much. There you go. There they are. Sarkozy and Merkel. You know what I mean. All right, Elena, thanks very much. Elena with the...